Hi all, I thought it would be nice to have a look at the clash of the sexes. Magnus Carlsen playing against Judit Polgar in their very first encounter in 2006, the World Blitz Chess Championship. This was in round 8. So Magnus playing white kicked off with d4. Judit Polgar needs no introduction. She is universally regarded as the strongest women chess player ever. She was #1 woman player in the world for an unbroken period of over 26 years, starting from the age of 12 in 1989, when she burst into the world's top 100, until her retirement from competitive chess in August 2014, age 38. So, okay. And Magnus Carlsen is our current world champion, obviously. So, knight f6. Magnus plays bishop g5, the Trompovsky opening. This was used with great success by British Grandmaster Julian Hodgson to win the British Championship several times. He really made this an aggressive weapon of choice. We see knight e4, which is one of the most common responses. Bishop f4, d5, e3, and now bishop f5. This is thought to take out a lot of the sting from white's setup. The bishop is willing to trade off against this one. We see f3, knight f6. But now Magnus turns his attention to the d5 square. He starts to put pressure on d5 and potentially b7, because the bishop has left b7 as well. e6, knight c3. We see bishop b4, queen b3. This is protected with the knight. Now white does get the dark square bishop though, without incurring any structural damage for the moment. Judit castles. We see knight e2, bishop g6. Now with the white king still in the centre, you might think this is a bit risky. h4. Where is white going to castle here? And black now plays rook e8. So potentially it looks, with the king here, it looks potentially scary. And we see now g4, again, leaving the king in the centre. So the 16-year-old at the time, or thereabouts, Magnus Carlsen, in 2006, is playing really, really aggressively with his pawns, but the king's still in the centre. Can this be exploited? We see now, in fact, d takes c4, which potentially gives that very nice d5 square for knight d5. White doesn't want to allow knight d5 and plays e4. Now here, it's very, very interesting, very critical, I believe, position. If this was a long game, black should really analyse the position in depth, because the white king's still in the centre. Can this be exploited? In the game, Judit plays knight takes e4. Now, before we go into that, there is a very, very interesting move, it seems here, an idea for black to play bishop takes instead. And after f takes, not to play knight takes e4, but to play e5 first. And it seems, in this position, white could be in very serious trouble here. Very serious trouble in these sort of positions. After knight takes here, e takes. This is very, very scary with the king still in the centre. It seems quite crushing for black. Yeah, this just seems all good for black, this whole thing, with the white king still in the centre. Even like here, there might be things like d3, and if castles, d takes becomes possible because we've got a queening possibility. So yeah, it seems as though this is the way to play it. Bishop takes e4 instead of knight takes e4. Now this is scary as well, with the king still in the centre, but white now plays rook h2, defending laterally. And e5 isn't so painful. There isn't a tempo gain on the queen. It might seem intuitively you'd often want to sacrifice a knight instead of a bishop, but here it seems the bishop sack was a little bit better. Bishop d3, white just castles now, queenside. Knight e7, looking again at knight d5, queen d2, we see knight d5 now. But knight c3, things are held up here, and white's threatening bishop takes d3. Bishop takes, rook takes. So white's actually just a piece up. Black's trying to get an attack to b5. But Magnus now is keen to establish a form pawn on h6, basically. He plays g5, not too worried about the queen side here. a5, trying to really break open lines with b4. But it's here Magnus actually nabs this pawn and gives black that file. Ultimately, it would relieve the pressure if this can be achieved, though. It's taken out an important pawn, attacking pawn, to open up lines. But this b4 you might think is quite dangerous. Precision is still needed. Knight c3, we see rook b3. Knight takes d5. Queen takes d5. Bishop e5. Note this rook is also handy for b2, and we see now after rook eb8, this is starting to get quite dangerous with c3. Magnus has to be very careful, but he's got a very good move available here. Can you guess what white can play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Okay, queen f4, yeah, threatening, queen takes, and then mating. So black has to step back. And now another very, very neat defensive move for Magnus Carlsen against c3. What would you play here with white? Very, very nice defensive move. Rook c2. Yeah. Now c3 isn't so bad. B takes. Rook takes. Now the king steps to d2. a4. And it's white's turn now. Now that king safety has been established, white goes on for the attack with h5. Getting a pawn to h6 is extremely dangerous. Rook ab3, h6. If the pawn moves, then queen f6, end of game, or thereabouts, near the end of game. We see rook b2, trying to get something against white's king. But now h takes g. Yes, the defences have been stripped away. Rook takes, king takes. We see a3, which does support rook b2, and it looks as though queen b5 is going to be scary after that. So how does Magnus deal with this? Well, he has to try and get his attack working as well. So white to play in this position, what would you play with white? Very, very nice attacking move now. If I give you 5 seconds, white to play here. Okay, g6, it opens up the lines even more. If f takes, then there's queen f8. So if h takes, then this is dangerous, queen h4 or queen h6 for queen h8. We see check. And now it looks scary to play king d3 in the light of queen b5. So king c1, keeping the king away from serious looking checks. Queen is tied down at the moment, of course. We see h takes g6. But now rook h1, threatening mate in 1. And this leaves black in a desperate position. Some checks are played, starting this rook sack, to try and get maybe a perpetual check. But king b3 here, check. And it looks as though the checks are going to run out. Queen e2 check. It seems in this position actually it was possible to play king c5. And then where are the checks? But Magnus plays this. Check. Check. It's a blitz game after all. Check. And now king d3, and then there's no checks here because b1's covered. Rook h8 is threatened. That's the end of the game. Either Judit resigned or ran out of time here, but it's a lost possession now for black. I thought this is a very, very interesting encounter where Magnus is using the Trompovsky, that innovative opening. So sometimes, you know, there's a lot of innovative openings that are being played on Blitz, and funny enough, it seems this year of 2006, the World Blitz Championship, by the way, was won, I think, partly by Svidler and Grischuk. They were up there, as they are today in Blitz, especially Grischuk. Yeah, Magnus was still developing as a Blitz player. In fact, Judit came ahead of Magnus in this particular tournament in 2006 with 8.5 out of 14. Actually, the scores might not be entirely correct at ChessGames.com, but they both did quite well, but midfield. So, okay, I hope you got something from this. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.